Hello, hello, hello. We are here. We are live. Welcome. Um, today, this is not real estate and finance discussions. We're steering clear of that. That's why I got my hat on. It's a little different hat today. We're not talking about mortgages and money. Maybe we'll. I don't know. You never know where things go. But ultimately, what I want to chat about today is something that is going to be new for what we usually talk about, which is health and wellness. And I find it, we'll say, apropos for this time of year. The reason I asked you to come in was because we're coming up on New Year's. So I figured this was a good subject to get started with. But anyway, I have Donna Shafir. She is a health and wellness expert, I'm going to call her, especially way compared to me. She's like a Yoda, and I have no idea how the force works. So I'm really excited about this because this is something that I get fired up about. I have a lot of thoughts, just like I'm sure you deal with clients every single day that think they know things, but typically don't.
Okay.
We gotta solve some myths and answer some questions. So if you guys are setting up your New Year's resolutions and trying to get on track for your body and your mind, this will be a good one for you to check out. So Donna, tell me, or tell everybody, tell us who you are, tell us what you do, so that way we can kind of establish your incredible credentials.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me.
Yep.
And I'm really excited to be here. I have some notes just in case I run, I get tangential.
Donna's nervous.
I am nervous. Thank you for putting it out there.
She's going to loosen up. She's going to start. We're going to be a little tight and a little concerned. And then as we start to talk, you'll start to free up a little bit.
By the end, we'll be partying here.
That's right.
We'll be dancing.
We'll take in those shots of tequila that you turned down a minute ago.
Yeah, I know. I have it right here close to me just in case. So my background is actually in psychology. Well, let me back up even before that.
Sure.
I started off really wanting to go to medical school, and I thought that was going to be the route for me. And then I decided nutrition was the route for me.
Okay.
And I found myself taking a lot of psychology classes, so that was the route for me.
Okay. You're like every young person on the planet.
Exactly.
But you were all in this. You were in the same neighborhood of ideas of what you wanted to do. It's just different, different paths you went down.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Serving others,
Yeah.
helping others,
For sure.
help in the healing profession. And so I just kind of followed that path of psychology and went on to get my doctorate in psychology.
Okay. So you're a PhD.
I have a PhD.
And I'm really intimidated right now.
Don't be intimidated at all. I forget sometimes, and then I'm like, wait a minute, I should make my kids say Dr.
Donna.
Whenever excuse me, that's Dr. Mom.
Dr. Mom, Dr. Shafir. I'm going to call you Dr. Shafir the rest of the way out.
That's okay. No need. So I went that route and became licensed as a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been practicing
a psychological. Well,
yes,
is that the right word?
Psychotherapist.
Yeah.
Correct. So I've been a licensed therapist since 2006.
Okay.
That thing in the background of nutrition and health just kept pinging back at me, and I found myself taking just classes and courses, and
you had interest in it.
Totally.
Yeah,
it's just a passion, and I love it so much. And honestly, what I found was that with people that I was working with, that they would come to me and talk about either, and a lot with kids as well, some behavioral things or emotional things that they were going through, and then we would just talk about kind of their daily habits, or even like what their breakfast looked like or their lunch looked like. And that I would, especially when I was working in schools, and I would talk to a lot of families, a lot of parents, and they would say, oh, well, they had donuts this morning, and yet here they are.
Why are they so?
Yeah. Why? Can you fix my child? And I'm like,
why are they bouncing off the walls and can't focus? I don't understand.
Don't get it. And so I was like, wait, there's just so much more to this than just how people are describing their behaviors or their emotions. It's all connected, right? So I decided to go back to study, because honestly, my biggest passion is studying, is school, is learning. And it's I never want to stop. That's just like you never stop. I think the moment that you think that everything is not a good moment. You should I always feel like there's more to know. The more I know, the more I realize how much I don't know.
Yeah. I think people run into that a lot. They get into a place where, you get comfortable with what you understand and what you know, and then you don't want to, or I guess it's not that you don't want to, but you just don't find it important. you know, to continue to expand your base of knowledge and stuff. And especially in what you do, because the science is changing, you know, constantly.
Yeah.
Like you can't afford to not have that passion to want to keep learning, right?
For sure. You have to, you know, stay abreast of everything that's changing, and be really flexible, and, you know, have a growth mindset, because it's constantly changing. And I think it's good because it's humbling, but it's also you are able to provide the most evidence-based information to your clients. So I became a health coach, and just kind of, and then also a nutritional therapy practitioner. So I brought back in the, you know, the health part as well as the nutrition part, which are my biggest passions, really, and just married it all together. So the whole mind, body, spirit thing. And then I have, you know, and we were talking right before this, I always think of, I'm very much science-based, but I allow for those things that the woo. I'm like science with a bit of woo.
Yes.
And the things that you just can't explain currently. Hopefully someday we'll be able to measure it in some way, because I think that's very important to be able to measure things. But at the same time, it's also, I'm kind of, allow my intuition to really guide me. So even though the science is what supports the stuff and kind of informs the things that we talk about, and we decide like the path for a client, the intuition has to be very
well. The world's always had a little bit of woo, right?
Yeah.
Because even when you know, when we were living in huts and, you know, hunting and gathering around the planet, the woo was how the sun came up. We had no idea how that worked, right? So it was God, it was whatever, it was a million different things. But you know, that was woo, right? And today there are things that occur, that happen, that we see, and people know that you can't explain and you can't measure, like you said. And so, but to just disregard those things and pretend like it's not there, you're kind of selling yourself short. And as a scientist, which is ultimately what you are, you want to explore and prove things wrong, prove things right, do whatever you can, because at the end of the day, you're trying to get answers. And if you stop asking questions and you stop looking under rocks that other people say, oh, well, that's woo, you know, or woo woo to woo, then you get away from that kind of stuff. And then your knowledge base is limited, right? You can't really grow from there.
Yeah. And I think it really goes back to what we were talking about, just having kind of that flexibility and that growth mindset. Like there's other things that I can't explain. And, you know, you were talking earlier about just like that you consider what I do as expertise, and I'm the expert, but really when I'm sitting with a client, I truly believe that they're the expert. So I may
on their own body,
on their own lives. I come with I may have the background, the experience. I like to nerd out. Trust me, I like to nerd out on all this stuff. And I bring it to the table, but they are the expert. And so this is very much a partnership. This is not me. I don't want them to ever feel like they come to me and here's what you got to do, and you got to do this, and, you know, follow this type of thing. Not at all. This is very much kind of a trial and error type of uh, experiment, if you will.
For sure.
And then we just kind of edit and refine whatever, you know, the path is that we take with
well,
them.
I think when it comes to, this is something that I learned this year, or not this year, but I mean, I've just kind of started to pay more attention to it a little bit, is just, or understand it better, is that, you know, when it comes to health and wellness of any kind for an individual, it's very personally based, right? You know, everything doesn't work for everybody. There isn't necessarily a one size fits all. I would imagine, we'll get into, I'm sure there's some tenets, you know, some basic stuff that kind of generally applies, but even in those situations, it's not 100%. You know, it's not, you know, when you say, hey, you know, you need to drink a lot of water every single day, or, you know, that's a good, I mean, yeah, for most people, for probably the vast majority, but there's probably some people out there that, you know, for whatever reason, they got some kind of issue with overconsumption of water. I don't know.
No,
but point being is just that health and wellness is a very personal thing. And if you go to, I would think if you go visit someone that you're trying to get information from, or you're trying to get advice from or help from, and they don't listen to you, they don't hear what you have to say about what you're experiencing personally, and they just start either prescribing or saying, well, you need to do this, you need to do this, it's probably not the right person that you're talking to, because that might have worked for the person that you had in here 30 minutes ago, but that's not necessarily going to work for me. It's a very personal thing, right?
Absolutely. And, you know, to make it even more complicated is that it's so nuanced that what worked for me 20 years ago it won't
Yes.
work for me now, right? Because our
Right.
bodies are so different, and
Yes.
our environment is so different, and our circumstances are so different. And heck, I mean, just even what worked maybe like 6 months ago with whatever, whether it's a workout or the way that your the stress management, strategies that you're using, it
Right.
might not work today. So I think it's constantly um, part of my work with people is helping them develop a really uh, healthy, positive relationship with their bodies so that they can listen to what it is that their body is trying to tell them. Like,
Right.
okay, this may have worked. It's not working right now.
Right.
And to keep fine tuning it.
Yeah. And well, you have to, that again, it goes back to the education piece. You have to continually, you have to educate yourself in
Mm-hmm.
your career path and what you teach and work with people every day. But people have to educate themselves about themselves. That's why, another thing that, has been over the last couple of years that I've paid more attention to is the importance of, things like blood work
Yeah.
and just knowing, it's kind of like ideal in money. So if you don't know your income and you don't know your expenses and you don't have your budget put together, then you're not going to know how to solve whatever financial issues you may be having.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have the data. And for your body, if you don't know, your hormone levels, if you don't know your vitamin levels, if you don't know all of those things, then it's going to be very difficult for you to, really kind of identify certain issues that you're going to have without the data, right?
Absolutely. And I mean, even before diving into those things, some people are just so out of touch with their bodies that they don't even know what real hunger is. They don't know
Right.
what real satiety is. They don't know I'll get a lot of, well, how did this feel whenever, you ate this? Or like, I don't know, I didn't pay attention. And so it's even just going down to like the basics of like, okay, let's learn how to listen to our bodies. Like
Right.
this is, this is the most important relationship you'll ever have,
Yeah.
is the one with yourself. Right. And so if you don't even know how to, and they'll blindly go to someone and ask for pills or,
Right.
things to take, but they don't even know
What
how
the
it's,
issue is
yeah,
or what the impact is.
right. What the impact, and just kind of like, that there was some things that they just hadn't paid attention to that they could have maybe solved on their own before. And I'm not saying that there's not room for that. Obviously there
Sure.
is, but yeah, just learning how to listen to yourself.
Would you say that people, I've read a few things just regards to when if I eat poorly, right,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like crap all the time, eventually I kind of get used to feeling like crap all the time.
100%.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I don't notice that I feel like crap because that's just how I feel.
Yeah.
So, and I just assume that everybody feels the same way. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, that was the biggest experience that I had when I first really started paying attention to my own physical, health and wellness, which just like everybody else, it's a roller coaster. I'm up and down all the time. But I did start to like alcohol, for example.
Yeah.
I love drinking.
Yeah.
It's fun. I
Yeah.
love whiskey. I love scotch. I love vodka. I'm not a beer guy because of I got kind of a gluten thing too, where it makes my sinuses all flare up or whatever, which I figured out, when I was younger. But I did notice that when I took time off of drinking for like 2 weeks, 3 weeks where I didn't have anything, you just feel so much better. You know what I mean? And then I would have a day or two, like at the holidays, like right now, I feel like crap because I've been drinking and eating for like 2 weeks.
Right.
But you start to feel like you're bloated, you feel sluggish, things hurt. And you're like, what is going on? And then I think back, I'm like, well, I've been drinking for like the last 4 days. Not heavy, like I'm not, getting obliterated and pounding a bottle of Crown, but 3 or 4 or 5 drinks, in a social environment, hanging out with the family and doing that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I just feel like complete crap.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't notice the difference until you experience it without it. Right.
Exactly. And I think I read this, I must have read it like 10 years ago or something, where most people will die never knowing what it was like to feel good. And that really like stuck with me because it made me sad that people will just go on living their lives feeling like crap and kind of just saying, well, it is what it is, like just allowing that to be just the case, and not even knowing that they could feel, even if it was 1% better, that they could feel 1% better.
Yeah.
And I think as you notice that it takes eliminating what it is, or at least decreasing the amount of what it is that's assaulting your body,
Mm-hmm.
to be like, wait a minute, so this is a possibility. And I think that's part of it too, is that some people just have this narrative that this is the way that it's always been this way, it's always going to be this way. And so they
They've kind
can't
of told
even,
themselves that.
yeah, they can't even imagine that it could be something different. And
Yeah.
so that's sad to me.
Yeah. Well, and you have to experience it, and like I said, I think you have to feel it. You have to do certain things. Like my father died last year
I'm sorry.
or year or so, year and a half ago.
Yeah.
And he wasn't in great health by many strangers, in good or bad. He was kind of the catalyst for me to look and go, I don't really want to be like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it was kind of one of those things where it's like, that he looked just like me. So it's like, okay, that's in my future if I don't figure out how to take better care of myself. But one of the things that he did on a regular basis that, I would kind of harp on him about when I would see him was he loved Pepsi. Like it was his favorite thing. And he would have a liter of Pepsi in his house.
Oh.
Every time you go to his house, there was a liter of Pepsi and there was a jar of peanut M&Ms or bowl of peanut M&Ms sitting on the table. And he loved them. And he would just a couple here, a couple there. But at one point he was like drinking a liter of Pepsi a day.
Wow.
And when I would tell him, like, you just need to just cut back a little bit, drink half a liter. I don't know, just drink a little bit less. But when you get into these habits and these modes and it's almost like you're autonomic, you're just kind of doing it without thinking about it, then, and nothing changes because you feel the same that you've always felt, whether you know that that's bad or not. That's just how you feel.
Yeah.
And so it's very hard to trigger changes in your behavior, which is the only thing that's going to trigger positive impacts on your health. And so it's kind of one of those things. It's like, well, what do you do to try to get yourself, in a place where, okay, do you have to have a heart attack? Do you have to have, like, what is it typically, like in your experience with dealing with people, that's that trigger point where they go, okay, I got to start taking better care of myself. I need to start doing these things. Like, how does that come about in most people?
Yeah. So first of all, I'm sorry about your dad. That's,
yeah. Well, yeah, it's not unfortunate.
It's sad. Yeah. So I think I get different types of people, but some are just very like on top of their health and they just want to make sure they continue to be, and they have like, whether it's a certain smaller reason or a bigger reason why they just want to, they're either high achievers and just want to make sure they continue to be on top. But then a lot of the times I get the people that have reached kind of that rock bottom situation where, and I like those, and I'll tell you why, but they reach out to me kind of at the rock bottom. Like they just can no longer go on in this way. And so they realize that that something has to change, and they have a big why. Usually it's something that's either they've lost someone and they don't want to go down the same path, or they've had like that heart attack or whatever.
Diabetic diagnosis or something.
Exactly. And it's scary. And they're realizing, their own mortality and wanting to get on top of that. But when I get those types of clients, what I like about that is I tell them, it's like, wow, it sounds, like you've reached your rock bottom, and that's a good thing, because that means there's nowhere
you're not going down any further. Yes,
we're going up from here. And so that's very, we talked earlier about just positivity. We really try to focus on the positive aspects and strength-based and those things, like the things that brought them there. Like, okay, yes, you've done all these behaviors that maybe led you here. And sometimes it's not just things that they've done, but things that have happened to them. That does, obviously we have our own.
You have to have a catalyst that gets you moving. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes, just life can be crappy and things can happen. Anyway, but trying to just focus on that strength of them reaching out, because that's so hard.
In your practice, do you feel like you have more people that come to you that are I'm already at a certain level of fitness and I really want to raise my game? Or do you think you have more people that come to you that are maybe not the rock bottom kind, but just folks that are, I got to figure something out and I got to get on the right path?
Yeah, it's probably half.
Oh, really?
Half.
50-50.
Okay. I definitely get those ones that are just like, they just want to stay on their A game, or like they've noticed just a little bit of slip, or even like those people who have gone through life transitions, whether it's just gotten married or had a baby or about to have a baby, wanting to prepare for that. Or I actually get a lot of older people too, like seniors. And so that's really neat, because they're just ready to take control of their health. And so
longevity is a big thing now. It's a big business, I guess you could call it, to some extent, just in that there's a lot of different neuroscientists and nutritionists and stuff that I follow, at least, that talk a lot about different activities and things to extend your life and make your life longer, better. Because I think our parents maybe, how old are you?
I'm 46.
46. Okay.
Yeah.
So we're about the same age. I'm
Yeah.
44.
Yeah.
Sorry, I know
You're a
that
baby.
is that an inappropriate thing
No,
to
I don't
ask?
care.
All
I'll
right.
talk about. I'm fine.
But I think our parents, we kind of lived in a world where it's like, well, once you get old, you're old.
Yeah.
Well, I'm 50 now, so this is just what life is. And I think that mindset's starting to shift a little bit, and especially in the health and wellness community, of saying, no, you may have another 50 years once you hit 50, because life extension is really, if you take care of yourself and you manage your body well, and especially your mind, because it plays such a big part of that if you handle those pieces well, you could, this day and age, with the technology that we have and the knowledge that we have, I've seen at least people talk about, there's an expectation that if you take care of yourself, you could live well into your hundreds, 105, 110, and have, there's a difference between living a long time and then having a good life for a long time.
Exactly.
Right?
I think, yes, the longevity part is obviously, something that has been talked about for a long time, but I think more importantly is quality of life.
Yes.
And we've been able to, through I've done nothing, but the medical community has been able to extend life, through like amazing measures, but keep it to what like the expense,
to
really,
what end?
like to where people are not actually having a good life, living longer, and they're not feeling well. And so, the idea behind just what I do and people who are more on the preventive side of things is to make sure that people live a quality filled life. And even if it's something that's shorter, it's not to the hundreds, but one that's where a person is active, where we're ultimately, to me, what it boils down to is to people feeling free, like the freedom to move their body, the freedom to
get around and not be hampered by that. Yeah,
absolutely. And that's so important. And once you lose that freedom,
that's when things start to go downhill.
Yeah, they really do.
Yeah. So. Well, and I think that's why you see people that when they retire from work, when their job ends, death tends to happen quickly after that, even really healthy people, because it's that. And again, that goes back to the mindset part of it that you were talking about, where I think you have to have a reason to get up every day. You have to have a why. Why am I waking up? What am I accomplishing? What are my goals? What am I trying to get to? And if your entire life was wrapped up, my wife and I talk about this a lot with our kids, because we have two kids, a 15 and a 14-year-old, or a 15 and 13-year-old. Yeah. And, that being said, we've got 5 or 6 more years of them, of my son being the last one to go, being around the house. And then after that, they're gone. Yeah. And so our entire life right now pretty much revolves around them. Mm-hmm. So the moment that they walk out the door, then we got to figure out who we are, what we're going to do. What are we going to do?
Who are you?
Now, we're not retiring from work or anything like that, but that still is a big chunk of our life that's going away, essentially. I know. So I think you have to have those reasons. That's why you see these guys that have been working at this, this company for 50 years, doing all this stuff. Then they retire one day and they're like, well, what now? Like, what am I going to do now? So that part, I think, is very important when it comes to your mental health, as far as like, okay, you're done working, you're done, but now you've got to have a reason to get up and go do something every day, right?
Yeah, for sure. And first of all, I think we need to coin a different word, like retired. It's like retired, like being tired again. I don't like it.
You hate
I think
that
we
word.
need to change it.
I'm with you. I agree. That's a bad word. I agree.
So I think, language is also really important. So like we need to just give it a different term. But
stop working because you have to.
And I think
do what you want.
I think we should never stop working. I mean, whether it's okay, maybe you're not working like
in the field, working on, mowing or going and, doing loans, but do something.
Do something. And I think that's super important why the reason that you wake up in the morning and feeling like a sense of purpose. Yeah. That's actually really tied into people's mental health and longevity. And if they don't feel like they have a purpose, they start slowly just kind of
depression starts kicking in.
Really? Yeah.
So, all right. So it's December the 30th and the New Year's is around the corner. And this is everybody's favorite time. I know, I'm sure. I think it's funny because other health professionals that I know that I've spoken to, especially around this time of year, everybody kind of rolls their eyes like, oh yeah, everybody's New Year's resolutions are kicking in. We're going to the gym. And it's like, okay, I'm going to get my gym membership. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to go to the store and buy all my gym clothes. Yes. I'm going to get my new water bottle. I'm going to have all these little tools. I'm going to get ready to go. Mm-hmm. And then a lot of people will go once, twice, maybe even 3 times, and then it starts to go right downhill, right?
Yeah.
So from in your professional opinion, like let's start with this. How do I stick with the goals that I'm trying to set for myself? I want to get into what the goals should be, maybe to some extent, but again, that varies by person. But just when it comes to general habits and behaviors that you can put yourself into on a regular basis to get you going in the direction that you want to go,
Mhm.
right? From your experience, what do you see people have the most success with?
Yeah. So, first of all, I think, resolutions, like, it's not inherently like a bad thing. It's just that people generally just they choose the same one that they chose last year
Right.
because obviously it
It
didn't
didn't work
work,
out.
right?
Yeah.
And they just decide, this is the year they're going to get in shape. This is
Uh-huh.
the year they're going to lose, those 10 pounds. This is whatever it is. And they just kind of do it. There's no plan.
Right.
There's no setting up your environment. There's no kind of path that they have set out for themselves. They're just going to do it. And so typically what they do is they just go all in, right? They'll go to the gym like 5 days a week. They'll just like work out really
Be
hard.
sore and worn out,
Yeah.
tired. Yep.
Oh, they just like put it all, into it. They'll, get rid of all the junk food. They'll eat all that, whatever. I'm just going to say chicken and rice and broccoli because
Right.
that's the
That's the thing.
stereotype.
Baked chicken, brown rice,
That's the
steamed
stereotype.
broccoli.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then, they'll just and they'll not allow for anything else. They'll just do that. And then a few
It's
weeks
like cold
in,
turkey. It's like
Yeah.
you're stop smoking, never happening again.
never happening again. And so, and they
And
don't
then
even
you
identify
fail.
any barriers that might come up or, whatever might come up that will challenge that mindset that they have. And 3 weeks in there, and
I think
that's
you're being
about it.
generous with 3 weeks,
Probably, I
honestly.
think it's they said like kind of January night by January 19th, people, like most people will have,
Back to
given
their
up.
own ways. Yeah.
But I think they just kind of burn out.
Yeah.
It's not sustainable.
Yeah.
So I think whenever you have a goal in mind, you
Mhm.
have to really think it out. It has to be something that you take seriously and it has to be realistic. Kind of how you think like the SMART goals where
Yeah.
um it has to be something that is realistic. It has to be something that is sustainable. It has to be something that you measure.
Mhm.
Like let's say it is something that involves with weight loss.
Mhm.
You have to measure it just so you need to know if you're on the right path. And,
Yeah.
and I'm not saying getting getting obsessive about it,
Yeah.
but just knowing
Step on a scale.
Yeah. kind of where you are, if you're
Yeah.
headed in the right direction, so that you can at least, like, if you've gone off course, you can know to self-correct, right? And so having those goals or having a resolution is not, as I said, inherently bad, but it's just that the way that people go about it.
How do you put the plan together?
Exactly. And
Yeah.
I think also just not having an all or nothing mindset where, okay, I get this a lot. Like, I don't have an hour to work out a day. Okay. And so my
I can't fit
question
it
is,
in.
I can't fit it in.
Well, you
And
do have 24 hours.
and I'm like,
and
well,
how
do
you
you-
used those 24 hours are up to you. But
that too.
Yeah.
But like, do you have 10 minutes?
Yeah.
And most people will say, well, yeah, I have 10 minutes. Okay. Well, let's do something, let's do something for 10 minutes a day.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, what good
What's
is
that gonna
that?
do? Yep.
What good is that? Well, it's better than nothing. So
Yeah.
to me, 1%
Yes.
is better than 0.
Yes.
And so if that means that you're walking 10 minutes a day, maybe you're not an hour of, workout, that's fine, but you're walking 10 minutes a day, or you're eating one more serving of vegetable, or you're sleeping 10 more minutes a day, or you're doing, 2 minutes of breathing versus like the 20-minute meditation.
Right.
That's amazing. That's
Yeah.
better than what you started out with. And the thing is that I found that behavior begets behavior, right?
Yes.
So the more you do something, the more you do it.
It's a snowball effect.
It is.
Yeah.
And so, like, let's say you do start going on walks. Well, that makes you want to eat better. And then
Yeah.
when you eat better,
Yes.
you just sleep better, right? And so it just kind of it really doesn't matter where you start, but I would say start where is easiest for you and where the lowest hanging fruit is. So if someone says to me, like the other day, I had this client who's like, and I get this one a lot, is where they say, it's the exercise is no big deal to me. That I enjoy. I love doing that. It's the nutrition that gets me. And I'm like, okay, well, let's start there.
Yeah.
Let's start with the exercise.
Yeah.
Like, let's get back into that. And
do something you have success with.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because when you feel successful, you feel motivated.
It's reinforcing.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and then the more you do that, the more you want to say, well, now I want to eat better.
Yeah.
And so, back to your point of like with the goals, I think it's again making them realistic, making them sustainable long term. So you're not there, where we have all these like fad diets and they're tools, they're great, cool. Like let's say if someone decides to go low carb or keto, those can be great tools for
Sure.
different situations and circumstances. So I don't want to invalidate them because they can have a purpose in the right spot. But
well, I think the problem is when you try to do too much at one time,
yes,
you're going to fail.
for sure.
You're absolutely going to fail. And especially if you're wading into waters that you're not familiar with. Like if it's not something you do on a regular basis or something you're trying something new, more often than not, you're going to fall down and you're going to fail. Everybody does. I mean, we do all the time.
I do.
I read and watch video. I mean, the reason, like I said, the reason I want you to have you in here is because there's a lot of stuff. I'm fascinated by this topic. And so I spend a lot of time and brain energy, like listening and reading. Do you know who Rhonda Patrick is?
Yeah.
Okay. So I follow her on Instagram and YouTube, and
she's great.
Andrew Huberman and all of these guys. Like I'm fascinated with this stuff.
Yeah.
And so, and I know a lot about it, but I'm terrible at execution a lot of times because I just fail like everybody else. But I have to go back and I have to restart constantly. And when I say restart, what I'm talking about is I just go back to some basic stuff and start forming those habits again. Yeah. So, I read a book one time. I can't remember the name of it. It was some health fitness book, but it was basically saying, you want to run a marathon. Okay. That's your goal, right? Well, if you've never run a marathon before and you don't run and that's not what you do, well, then go outside and walk around the block one time and then go back inside and be done for the day. Don't say you got to walk 10 miles and you got to just go once. And then the next day, go around the block twice. And the next day, 3 times. And then so on and so forth. And then run around the block. And then, you have to take those little steps, because if you don't take the small steps, you're never going to achieve the big goal. It's never going to get there. Yeah. And you need help figuring out sometimes what those small steps are, right?
Yeah. And that's the thing, like people, as you just put so eloquently, they'll just kind of like jump to like those big things and just like miss those little things those like daily habits and the little things that add up. And what I encourage my clients to do is just grab 1 or 2, maybe 3 if we're being ambitious. Yes. Habits and just do them daily.
Yeah.
Consistency, daily. And Dave, my husband, he has been working out consistently for the last year and a half. So we've talked about the consistency point. Like he'll show up, even if it's like
don't want
to be there, and he'll just like walk.
Yeah. Just do something.
Just do something and do it consistently. It takes about 21, 22 days. I mean, the numbers don't really matter too much to form a habit, but in order to make it automatic, it's about 66 days. So, people, what I find is that they'll say that they failed, at something like a goal that they had set out for themselves, but really they just gave up too quickly.
Right.
Like they gave up at that mark that it could have become like, what if they just waited a little bit longer and continued a little bit longer? And then they would have found a little bit of, success. Okay. And then that would have driven them to do more. And so just consistently doing those things. Once you have like 2, 3 habits going on, then you add a couple more. And then before you know it, you have a routine going on. And so instead of just jumping all in, just doing, as you said, the little walk and then going the next day and doing the longer walk and then longer. And then it just becomes like a thing that you do.
That's just what you do.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've read some books over this last year or so about habits. Like I've become very, very interested in habit formation. And I didn't realize how much of our daily life is just automatic.
Yeah.
Like you just do what you do every day and you don't think about it, because there's certain parts of your brain that are just programmed to, I get up, I brush my teeth, I put my pants on, I go make coffee, I go to the bathroom, I go, you do that. And if you really look at your routine, if you sit down and think about it, you're like, okay, what am I like that? And you go, well, yeah, I do this.
Totally.
I do this. Everybody's like that.
Yeah.
We all have our routines that we do in the morning, in the evening, and everything else. So once you're aware of that and you know that this thing exists, then you get into, okay, well, how do I change it? Because I'm like a computer. If I can program myself to do the things that I want to do and not the things that I just do because I'm already in the habit of doing them. Well, how's that work? You know, how do I create these things? And back to the mindset and the psychology of it, you know, the whole thing about triggering and rewards. And, you know, like I got into a habit where, and I've in and out of it because I've added things to it. But, you know, I wanted to do push-ups in the morning. I wanted to get up because it gets my blood flowing, you know, and, you know, I'm a guy, I want to get some big muscles, you know, all that kind of stuff. So I would wake up and the first thing I always do is brush my teeth because I'm a mouth breather. So I'm like,
yeah,
mouth's disgusting in the morning. So
great visuals. I'm loving this.
That's right. So I wake up, I want to brush my teeth because my mouth is gross. And then I would do push-ups. I would do like 20, right? And my goal was like, I want to do 20 more later, whatever. But just that first round of doing that, there was a good solid 6 or 8 months of me doing that consistently. I maybe never got to the next 20 or the next 20 or whatever, but just that trigger of brushing my teeth told my brain, oh, now we got to do the push-ups. And I would do it without thinking about it necessarily. You know what I mean? Once you get to a certain point.
Yep. That's habit stacking, what you just did there.
Yo, okay. So explain
and
that
that's
to
actually a great thing. So what you did is that you took, well, let's say someone was brushing their teeth and then they decided to do squats with it.
Okay.
But what you did is you said, every time that I'm done brushing my teeth, I'm going to go do my push-ups. And so you stacked a habit that you already have, and then you added something to it that you're trying to learn. And so it becomes something that becomes paired with it.
Okay.
And that's a really good way to learn a new habit. So let's say while I'm preparing my coffee, I want to incorporate breathing or meditation. So I'm making the coffee. It's kind of meditative anyway.
Yeah.
This is a really good time to either, like, you can practice gratitude or, you know, just have a few moments of just breathing or just meditation, whatever it is that you want to do. Or
so real quick, because you're talking about the meditation stuff, and this is why this thing's going to go on forever. But when someone introduced me to meditation a long time ago, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, you want me to sit and think about what?
Yeah.
You know, think about nothing. Well, I can't think about nothing because my brain is always going constantly. But then I talked to somebody else, read a book, and it was put into a different perspective for me that it's exercise. Okay. It's brain exercise, because when your brain makes you do the things that you do on a daily basis without thinking about it, and you don't have control over that behavior, you have to exercise that muscle in order to get control over those behaviors. So whether it be emotional or whether it be, you know, you overreact to stuff, or you get really angry about something, or, you know, whatever the case may be, learning how to control that is very important. And I think when you say meditation, I think a lot of people get into the woo world. They're like, oh, here we go. We're going to hold our fingers and go, But will you talk about just a little bit about that's not necessarily what that is. It can get there, and there can be wonderful things that happen that's why it's called a practice, once you get to that point. But can you elaborate a little bit on the whole meditation thing and calming your mind and what the benefits of that are?
Yeah. So, to me, yes, I'm with you that it can be really hard to just, well, what do you mean I can't think of something? I can't think of anything. I'm constantly thinking, but it's bringing yourself back to your breath. So let's say you are starting to think about, well, what do I have to, you know, pick up for the kids after school, or what's going on? Just constantly bring yourself, okay, breathe. So you can use whatever word it is that you want to use to bring yourself back in. For me, it's breathing, or, you know, visualizing a place for yourself that just feels calming. And it's learning how to center yourself.
Well, you're controlling your brain.
Yes.
Yeah.
And practicing it daily, so that because it will happen, it's not if, but when something happens that is going to rattle you, you'll be able to breathe through it.
Right.
And that's really hard to do, right? Because especially if you're a reactive person, or if you're kind of emotionally like forward, like that's where, you know, you're driven by that, it's going to be harder to do. So that's why, as you said, it's called a practice, because you have to constantly practice that. Not to mention that if you start your day in that kind of state versus like going on your emails or checking the news,
immediately getting all the dopamine hits to your brain.
Exactly. This way you're just kind of you're setting this intention, and also you're practicing this intention of just bringing more calm, and then being able to handle what it is that's coming your way. It doesn't mean it's going to be perfect. Like, I practice this and I'm still like,
no, not at all.
But
yes, I've gone in and out of doing it. One of the things that I do now, that I've been doing for, I don't know, about a couple months, is, and this I got from Andrew Huberman, was in the morning when I wake up, I used to drink coffee like right away.
Mhm.
My wife and I just brew a cup and we're ready to go.
Yeah.
But then, you kind of experience a little afternoon sluggishness, because, and I don't know the science, but he can explain it. But essentially, the concept is you get out of bed. Natural light is very important when you
Mhm.
wake up because you have natural rhythms, circadian rhythms in your body that tell you when to be awake and tell you when to sleep.
Yep.
And phones, interact with that all the time because of the light, the blue light that comes out of these and screens and all that kind of stuff. So in the morning, you get up, or I get up, and the first thing I do is I go outside and I go walk. And I go walk.
Right.
I usually go walk for about 30 minutes. I'm not running. I'm not sprinting. I'm literally just walking.
Yeah.
Now I vary. Sometimes I listen to a book. Sometimes I don't listen to anything. If I just want to, it's like a meditative thing where I'm just
Mhm.
walking and with my own thoughts.
Mhm.
Sometimes I'm thinking about stuff. Sometimes I'm not. It just depends on the circumstance of the day and what's going on. But it puts me in a place where I don't check my email. I'm not checking, social media. I'm not, reading anything. Sometimes the listening part of it is, that's why I vacillate on it a little bit. But then outside you get the natural light and then you get
Mhm.
movement. And that was the part I didn't know too, is that your visual field, when you're walking, you're seeing things moving around. Well, this kind of cues your body to be awake naturally on its own.
Mhm.
And then his thing is, then you can go get the coffee like an hour and a half later,
Yeah.
because now all of those, cellular triggers or whatever's happening in there is reset to a place that you're not requiring something artificial to get your body awake in an alert state. And then you can use the artificial stuff later on.
For sure.
But that's just something that for me, that I've started to adopt in my routine, just because it is, like you said, in the morning, it's just relaxing. It puts me in a place where I'm not, I mean, there's always stress and things like that, but at least I feel like I have control over it in that situation.
Yeah, yeah. I think for us too, like getting our workouts in the morning is super important, and getting some sun is
Yeah.
important too, and daily walks and things like that. And um, when you start your day in that kind of in that fashion versus again just jumping into all the things that just trigger you,
Yeah.
it really has made, for me, it's made a huge difference. I've been practicing that the last couple of years, just like not going to emails first, not going to all
Yeah.
those things first, and it's amazing.
Well, can you say how important, or give me your opinion on how important it is to have time to yourself where you just, you know, I say just think, right? You just sitting and thinking,
Mhm.
you're not being stimulated. Because right now we live in this world where there's so much stimulation. That's the problem I have with my kids to some extent. And I mean, it's my fault. I'm not blaming them,
Sure.
because we give them the TV or the
Yeah.
screens and the phones and the PlayStations and everything else. At least as kids, when we were growing up, we had to be bored. We
Exactly.
would sit in a doctor's office for 4.5 hours waiting to go see the doctor, and there was nothing to do
Too
but
bad.
read the highlights
Yeah.
magazine, or play with the, the little, what's the little wires with the balls that go around. So like there was nothing to do.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying like we had stimulation too, and it all varies by generation, but it's become such an issue now in our society that nobody has time to, either, whether you want to call it be bored, whether you want to call it think to yourself, whatever. But how important is that, especially for your mental health?
I think it's profound. Like it's very important. I think, in my opinion, my very humble opinion, is it's one of the causes of burnout, which a lot of people are experiencing these days, is that we're just overstimulated. It's just constant. We can't hide from anything.
Right.
We're constantly being bombarded by either emails or, whatever other stimuli we have around us. And it's just getting more and more and more. And it's just overwhelming. Right. And so we need to have some kind of daily practice where we're just like, we just get to see me take a breath for that, because you just have to get away from it all to just reflect,
Mhm.
on
Yeah.
what it is that you're thinking and feeling, or maybe even just like just be it with nature. I mean, we are so disconnected from nature anyway. And so just have that time to just get away from all these artificial stimuli, which I'm so grateful for technology. It's
Yeah.
wonderful.
It's great
Absolutely.
tools. Yeah.
Great
Yeah.
tools.
Mhm.
But to have it all the time, that really just goes against just our human needs.
Yeah.
We're really, and back to what you said your new habits are of just getting outside. Those are things that people were doing
Forever.
always.
Yeah. That's
We
been the default
yeah.
before now. Yeah.
And, many of the things that we're experiencing these days, whether it's uh, on the physical level or mental, but it's all connected. Just as humans, it is because we're just constantly stimulated by
Right.
things around us, and we're not following just like the natural rhythm of things.
Mhm.
And so, very important.
Yeah. It puts you in a place where, if you don't have that, and you see that term nowadays, they call it, what is it, quiet quitting? Have you seen that?
Yes, I
Yeah.
have.
Where, you know, employees of companies and that kind of thing. We got Conrad here. He's talking about basketball as his meditation. Like he's my official contributor to the show from the outside. So
Aw.
him and his young son, they just won their first basketball tournament this weekend. So I know
Oh, that's awesome.
they're pumped up at the Jackson household. So shout out to him. But I think when you talk about, or when there's this new thing called quiet quitting that's occurring, when you talk about burnout and people not being able, and they think, well, I'm overstressed, or and it's like, what's the solution? That's why we drink too much. That's why we do drugs. That's why we, you know, some people, they'll go run. That's their, you know, addiction. They'll go out there and just run for 2 hours because they got to get everything out of their head.
Yeah.
But you have to have that time to yourself, or else you get to those points where you just give up and you're just like, I can't do it anymore. And I think, I mean, I don't know. And on this piece right here, did you grow up in Israel?
So I was born in San Diego, and then we moved. My parents are Israeli. I moved to Israel when I was 6. I was there till I was 12. I spent summers there afterwards.
So
but
you were
then I grew up, you know, so I had formative years there, but then came here for my, you know.
So I don't know if it's the
same,
what I would call the European model, if it's kind of falls into the same thing, but the idea behind, like, work's important. You know, you need to work, you got to support your family and have, you know, missions goals, but time to yourself is also important. You know, the whole idea of whether it's the siesta in the Spanish culture, or if it's, you know, working 4 days a week as opposed to 5, or, you know, on and off days or whatever. Do you feel like that's a better model, you know, as far as like for mental health?
Yeah. Like, are you talking like about like a 4-day?
Just, you know, we live in the United States and it's just go, work, succeed.
I think it's,
as opposed to just like, it's okay to not hustle every day.
Well, I think, whether it's my opinion or not, I think the evidence is kind of in like, we're seeing people sick, like physically, mentally, emotionally. They're just not doing well, right?
Yeah.
And we're, as you said, we're in that very like hustle type of culture where just go all the time and go around the clock, and not have, and time off is just something that we have to constantly earn, versus like this right of just having time off. And so I think there's, you know, evidence for that. Now, Israel is more like here, but like in the European model, I mean, you have to take a month off. Those things are, you have to spend time with your family eating meals. And so definitely that's a better model. Right?
Well, I think it's funny because everybody has extremes, and somebody will hear that and go, yeah, I should take time to myself. And then all they do is take time to themselves. It's like, okay, wait a minute. There's a balance, right? Like, absolutely, you got to hustle, but you also got to, you know, take time for yourself and reward yourself for that too. Yeah. So, so if you were talking to somebody who came into your office and they said, okay, I am ready to get things back on track. Maybe they're not rock bottom, but let's just say they haven't been in a place where, you know, they've taken care of their body and, you know, their mind, and they're trying to get to a place. What would you say are some, you can call them core tenets that are pretty universal? Again, nothing is 100%. Sure. But what would you say that if you want to start somewhere, I would do these things, you know, these 3 or 4 things to get you in the right direction? Because A, it's maybe easier, you know, it's a simple thing. B, you know, I think it's important to get feedback from your body, you know, because you'll feel better if you do these things, and that'll lead to other better behaviors. So what would you say are some stuff that kind of fit into those categories that people should look at?
Yeah. So first of all, you know, I kind of would want to know what they're doing well right now. Let's start them out, because you want to meet the person where they are and start where they are.
Okay. So what do you like to do? What are you into?
Yeah. What have you succeeded with in the past? Like, what has worked for you? So again, like,
I love my dogs. And so I'll be your patient.
Yeah,
right? We'll play a little role play.
I'll
be your client. Sorry, your client. Okay, so I come into your office and I say, okay, Donna, I feel like crap every day. I'm, you know, I want to start feeling better. I'm motivated to get it done. 2023 is going to be my year. So what do I do?
Okay, so tell me a bit about what has been going well for you, like in the past, before you came to me? What have you been doing well?
Well, I don't do much well, honestly. I sleep in a little bit too long than I would prefer to. I can stay up too late. I do, I enjoy spending time with my dogs, and we get in the pool a lot and play in the water, and they enjoy that as well.
Yeah.
And then I spend a lot of time with my kids, and I like spending time with my kids.
That's awesome. So you just said that you're not doing, a lot well, but
Well,
it seems like you are.
okay. See, your positive reinforcement. I like that. I like that. I like that.
Absolutely. So it sounds like you like being active with your dogs and your kids.
Yes.
That's awesome. So you're
If you
getting
call
some
it
activity.
active, I mean, I'm usually sitting in a chair watching, but
Okay, let's get active. Let's get active. But back to like the core tenets, I think some of the things that we look at, like if we were going to look at the pillars of health, right?
Okay.
So there's going to be, to me, I used to say that nutrition was the top thing. Like that was my passion. Like nutrition, if it starts with nutrition, but I have completely changed my mind on that.
Okay.
Sleep is number one.
Okay.
Sleep.
Yes, I've heard that.
And like if you don't get your sleep, everything else is just gonna fall off. So we're definitely gonna be looking at like what your sleep looks like, right? And
so what would you say on sleep? What are some very important things that you need to pay attention to make sure that you sleep well?
Yeah. So your evening routine, or the one that's setting you up for it actually starts in the morning, but let's say a nighttime routine for having successful sleep would be just winding down, having a routine that just kind of calms you down at the end of the night, not checking your emails, not being on your Facebook,
staying away from screens.
If you can, I know that's tough, but if you can, at least like half an hour, like before you go to bed, and then having some kind of like relaxing routine, like whether it's washing your face or brushing your teeth and just like dimming the lights, something that really sets the tone.
Maybe a little mommy and daddy time, whatever.
That's actually great.
Yes,
that's great.
Yeah.
And
what about timing? Like, is it important to go to bed at the same time and wake up?
They say that it's like, and they say that like if before 11 is like when your body is just gonna like have a better. So if you were to like sleep from 11 to 7, let's say, you're going to have a better sleep cycle than if you were to go to bed at 1 and wake up at 9. So it might be the same amount of hours, but we're kind of messing with the way that
natural. Because it has to do with like when the sun goes down, when the sun comes up, a little bit, right?
And some of just our internal circadian rhythm of things. So I'm not an expert in that at all, but so
timing's important.
Timing is important. And then making sure your room, we talked about this earlier, room has to be kind of in a cool temperature. I know everyone is different, but the optimal would be between like 63 to like 68, 69 degrees in your room. So
it's better to sleep in the cool than it is in warm.
For sure.
Okay.
And if whether it is that you have to have some definitely complete darkness, but like you can do some white noise. I mean, Dave and I have like this.
You got a whole
system.
thing.
Now it's like when we go out of town, we're like, okay, we have to just somehow
got to bring the fan and
like
bring the phone with the.
But there's actually like the box fan on on Spotify that we figured out. It's just like a game changer. And also making sure you don't eat anything too heavy or drink too much before bed, because that's going to
messes up your sleep.
It really does.
Yeah. I drink a lot of water before I go to bed, and I got to go to the bathroom pretty early. Does that kind of throw it off a little bit too?
Maybe want to
scale that down a little bit
to the earlier parts of the day. Not that I don't do that sometimes too. So don't,
seems like when I'm just sitting there, I'm drinking thirsty.
Well,
at least I stopped drinking whiskey, I guess.
That is a good thing, because that will definitely disrupt your sleep. So that, so I have like sleep, and then to me, stress management is right under it.
Okay.
And
when you say stress management, what do you mean?
Any coping strategies that you use to manage your stress.
Deal with whatever, like journaling or something like that.
Whatever could be journaling. And I don't necessarily mean like you doing it before bed, but it can be. So whatever it is I use, I mean, for you, it could be like, playing video games, or it could be like going for a walk.
So it's some people would call it like decompressing, maybe.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, something that you use.
Some people watch a show just to shut their brain off and got it.
But whatever it is, and it doesn't have to be just one thing, it can be a few things, but definitely managing your stress, whether it is using just tools on your own or seeking professional help for that. That's really, really important.
Right.
And all of those things, like especially as it applies to making, let's say you're trying to make lifestyle changes, you can take care of your nutrition and exercise, and it's all great. But if you're not taking care of those other things, it's just not going to be optimal.
Right.
Because you're releasing all these hormones that are just going to get in the way of you really just living your best.
Well, and if you
life.
if you're not rested, then you're not going to want to get up and work out, and you're not going to feel great after you're done. You're just going to be tired because you didn't get enough sleep, and all this kind of. So yeah, I mean, I can see how that all relates to each other.
Absolutely. Not to mention the hormones that are released whenever you're not sleeping well, and
Right.
you're hungrier, you're not satisfied, your cortisol levels are up, your belly fat, that's when the cortisol levels that's associated with belly fat. And so it can just kind of hinder your
and that all kicks up because of lack of sleep and stress. Those two things really
those
kick
two
in.
things are just like paramount to everything else.
Well, how do people like what are some things that you would suggest, specifically when it comes to like dealing with stress? And I think there's two schools of thought when it comes to stress, in that individuals, not that it's what it is, but it's like either you're going, well, I'm stressed, but I got to get over it. I think I suffer from this. Like, okay, I'm having a stressful day, but suck it up, get over yourself, quit dealing with it. That's what's going on in my brain. Like, stop being a whiny. Just like deal with it.
Yeah.
And then there's the other side of, oh, everything's stressful. I'm always stressed. Everything brings me stress. Oh, the yellow light turned red too soon. Oh my gosh, my day's ruined. You know what I mean? There's both of those sides. So what would you suggest to somebody who? They're all stressed, by the way, though. One of the things that I've heard recently that I think is brilliant is somebody said the worst thing that's ever happened to you is still the worst thing that's ever happened to you. Meaning, maybe I broke my leg last week, and that's the worst thing that's ever happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you lost your child the week before that, and that's the worst thing that's ever happened to you. Well, obviously somebody from the outside is going to go, well, that's obviously way worse than you breaking your leg. Okay. Yeah. But the emotions and the stuff that you feel, because I've never experienced the loss of a child or anything like that, that's the worst thing that's ever happened to me. So the emotions are similar. They're not measured the same. They're not, whatever. But what that's saying is just like, just because it doesn't seem like it's that bad to you in that moment, it's still a stressful situation and causes you problems.
I think, definitely it's our perception of what it is. So that it's all about perception. Right. And so,
because you're living the world through your eyes.
Absolutely.
And nobody else is.
And your body, will react to stressors in the same way. Like especially if you're a person who's just, more reactive in that way, whether you're being, chased by a dog,
right,
or like you were late turning something in, your body's still going to react the same way.
Yeah, your heart rate's going to go up.
And the thing is, like, we live in a world where we're chronically stressed. It's not like, not that it was easy living back in the day when you're being chased by things, but like but
the emotions are still the same,
right? They're the same, but they had moments of just like calm and not, whereas now it's constantly chasing us. And so the stress management piece is so important because we're constantly in a high stress level. And back to like what we were talking about, where we're constantly stimulated. That's one of the contributors of that, is that, you'll get emails from this, and then you'll get like news from this, and then you'll get like sounds from that. So it's, or a ping from something. So it's this constant stress.
Yes.
And that's why just finding something, if you are one of those people that just kind of says, all right, we'll just shove it, just so I mean, there's only, it's kind of like if you were to tell your kid, I always use this, like if you were going to tell your child to go clean their room, and they're like, sure, I'll go clean my room. And then you come in there and they're like, it's perfect, isn't it? And then you open up the closet and like everything falls out. It's the same thing. Eventually, and you and I had talked about this earlier too, is that the body stores these emotions.
Right.
And so you may think like, I'm good, like I'm such a dude, like I hold all my feelings together, like no one knows, everything's fine.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, like pestering somewhere in your body, you have like this,
like a tumor in my stomach.
Well, even if it's just like you have back issues, and you're just like holding, and you're just like, I don't know why, what's happening here.
Yeah.
And
that energy's got to go somewhere.
It's got to go somewhere.
Yeah.
So you have to find a way. And, I'm a huge proponent of therapy. I think anyone would benefit from therapy, but it's not for everyone. Like some people just, it doesn't speak to them, or it's just not the right tool for them. But there are ways to have therapy without being.
I think when you say therapy, unfortunately, it has a probably a negative connotation to it to some people, not to everybody. But that's because of the way they think that they're laying on a couch and they're spilling their guts to some stranger who's going to tell them how to fix all their problems. And at least I've never personally had therapy myself, but I know others that have.
You are now, by the way.
but that's what I was going to say is this is a form of therapy. When you talk to somebody and you tell them, and especially the reason that the stranger part is so beneficial is because there's what I guess you would say maybe less fear of judgment because it's not somebody that you know. So when you tell somebody your deepest, darkest inner fears or whatever they may be, that's a complete stranger, that is a professional, that's not there. That's pretty cathartic, I think, because those are things that people hold inside. They don't let it out, and like you said, it builds up. Your back hurts, your neck hurts, you've got a cough or whatever the case may be. But I think it gets lost on the fact that, like you just said, there's a lot of things that are therapy. Conrad's talking about this is why he plays basketball. It's his stress reliever. That's his therapy. Your therapy is speaking to someone, is maybe spending time with your mom and talking to her and, going through, whatever happened in your day or your week or whatever. And, and I think that, women are way better at this than I think men are because they're more vocal. They're more, generally speaking, they're a little bit more verbal with how they feel and what they're thinking. And I'm that way a little bit just because I talk so damn much, but it has become, that's kind of my, it drives my wife crazy because I'm the talker and she's not. And so I'll just go and go and go and go and go. Yeah. She's like, are we done? Like, are we finished with this? Like, no, I'm still, I call it getting the poison out. I'm still getting my poison out.
Great. Yeah. And actually, by the way, it's just from the way that we are brought up, that's why boys are and men are like that. It's not so much that, actually, I was just reading yesterday that when you compare 6-year-old boys and girls, the boys are more emotional than the girls are. So I think we're just, sadly you're taught out of
trained.
that. Like,
shut up. Don't say anything.
Yeah, you're fine. You're fine.
Quit crying.
Exactly.
I'm guilty of that, by the
way. So it's, I know it does have a negative connotation for people, but just getting it out in some way. So, like Conrad was saying, like basketball, like whatever.
Yeah. Go talk to your boys, hang out.
Whatever is, however you're doing it. But I think, talking about things and just
that interpersonal social interaction with people is important, right?
So important. I mean, and back to what our conversation about longevity, I think if you look at there's a whole talk about blue zones, like what are some of the common threads? And I think one of the common threads is that they have that social interaction with people on a daily basis. Community is really important. Just talking to people.
Well, they use, there was a long time, and I saw this somewhere where like Okinawa, Japan has always been used as kind of like the, because they had like the longest, lifespan of anybody. And they always talked about their diet, and they talked about, well, they eat fish and, it's the healthy fats and, the rice and And that was the narrative for a very long time. Well, just within the last, maybe 10 years or so that I've seen, it started to change and morph a little bit, and that the diet was a part of it for sure. But what was also a big part of it was they walked everywhere they went. There were very little automobile cars or transportation on the island because it's a smaller island. So village to village, they're walking. And, again, it's kind of an older mentality or an older world of, I'm talking to my neighbor, I'm visiting my aunt, that's 2 villages over. And, there was that sense of community there. So not only are they getting out and exercising, whatever you want to call it, they're moving. And then they're also in that same, because that puts you in a great mindset. And now you're walking over to your neighbors and you're going to chat with them for an hour and talk about how their family's doing and all that kind of stuff. And that is another level of, that mental, whatever you want to call it.
Resilience.
That just kind of helps those people live so long because they just have all these perfect, factors that, and it's just their culture. It's not like it was designed that way. It's just who they are.
They don't drive to a gym to go do that.
No.
They just, it's part of who they are. And I think, again, like in going back to what you asked, what people can do. So like the piece about sleep, stress management, and then when it applies to nutrition, I think just, again, not taking like that all or nothing type of approach, but just doing more of what you think that works for you,
right,
and less of what doesn't. And that takes a lot of trial and error, because what works for me may not work for you, and vice versa.
Right. But there are some things
that we can agree upon, right?
That are kind of like, don't do that.
What I will say, like going into the new year, I think people have really just not paid attention to their intake of protein. And
Okay.
I wanted to make sure I didn't say this because I think
Like not enough.
not enough protein.
Okay.
And I follow this this one doctor, and her name is Dr. Gabrielle Lyon. I don't know if you've heard of her, but she's very muscle centric. So
Okay.
it's all about muscle is the organ of longevity.
Right.
And
Supports bones and joints and keeps you upright.
yeah. And then
Burns
once you
fat.
start losing, yes. And once you start, so it's the key to metabolic health. I really feel like it's the gold mine. But once you start losing muscle, you're losing bone too. And then, you know how we talked about freedom, you start losing freedom because you're not moving around and you're not as mobile. And then as people age, some of the things that she has seen, because she has worked with the, you know, with the senior community and people who are like literally on their deathbed, and they've just literally just deteriorated to nothing. And they just don't have a lot of support for their body. Like their whole structure is pretty much gone. And so going back to protein, people just, especially for some reason, women don't consume enough of it. I think there's just kind of like this whole, I actually don't know why. I'm a big protein person, so I'm not sure why. But
you know, my wife's kind of that way a little bit, and she says, I may be misquoting her, but she like sometimes has stomach issues with it, like it bothers her. But I don't know if that's lack of, you know, it's kind of one of those, like if you don't do it regularly, then you don't get used to it.
It could be like if you
something
lose
like
some enzymes for it, but it just depends obviously on the type of proteins that you're consuming. Now, if you're someone who eats animal products, then it's easier to get enough protein. But
Are you a vegetarian or vegan?
not at all.
No, okay. Were you at one point?
I was when I was younger.
Okay.
But it was like it had no reason whatsoever, just because it was, you know, just something that I was doing. But I was also, my dad had a heart attack when I was 13. And so, well, there is a reason. My dad had a heart attack when I was 13. And so we were told, you know,
red meat,
get rid
salt,
of all the red meat. Do not eat any fat. So I grew up on like those
Isn't that so horrible that
cookies that have no fat, you know? Yeah, it was very, very bad.
Can you speak to that just real quick, just for anybody that's not familiar with the whole thing about where we went from, say, 70s, 80s, 50s, 60s, whatever, all the way up to now, where it used to be low fat, you know, no red meat. This is how you kept yourself from having heart disease, right?
Yeah.
That's not true.
One of the worst things that we could have been taught. And
yes.
And you and I grew up in that time. So it was, and I was personally affected because my dad had a heart attack. So they were like,
and these are coming from doctors. No eggs.
No eggs. No meat. You know, just eat like all the
cholesterol's
low
bad.
Fat, all of that. Yeah. All the low fat, you know, high carby stuff. So I would
use vegetable oil. Don't use butter.
Nah, none of that. We had margarine.
Here's all this vegetable oil in your food. Yeah. Don't put that fat in there. That's bad for you.
It was awful. So definitely I kind of became more vegetarian and then kind of vegan just because I guess it was a great idea, but I was horribly sick from it. And I told you just earlier that I have celiac, and that's kind of, I think that really just tipped things over because I was consuming a lot of things that were not real food and, you know, eating the things that.
Well, that's what happens to a lot of people that go vegetarian or vegan, is that they end up eating a lot of carbohydrates and a lot of sugars, kind of the same
And for some people that works, by the way. I don't want to you know,
again,
take away from
not one size fit all.
Yeah.
Yes. And if you, I think if you manage that diet well and you're very well versed in how it works,
you can definitely do it well.
But even when you hear people say things like, and I've heard this before, I don't know if this is true, about, you know, like broccoli has protein, right? Tofu has protein.
Yeah.
That's true. They do. But from what I understand or what I've read is that there's a difference between having protein and it being bioavailable, meaning your body can actually absorb it. And that's when you were saying the thing about eggs, that's another thing that I've learned this year. And I've always loved eggs, but I didn't realize it, you know, I read somewhere it was like the most next to breast milk. So breast milk was number one. And then right second to breast milk, it was the entire makeup of that egg is used by your body. Essentially, I can't remember what the term they called for it, but it was basically like 89% or 90% of what is in that egg, your body will use, and it will form muscle. It'll form tissue.
Yeah.
It turns into something.
It's highly bioavailable.
Yes. Yeah. But then something like a piece of broccoli has benefits. It's got fiber. It's got all that kind of stuff. But the protein that's there, for whatever reason, your cells, your body can't actually access it as well as they can from a steak or a piece of chicken or an egg.
Not to mention that you need a lot of broccoli in order to meet those needs. And so like when I'm talking with my clients, I'm like, for every meal that you have, aim for at least 30 grams of protein. And I'm being like very like, I would love if it was like 50 grams.
How many grams of protein are in like say an 8-ounce steak?
8-ounce steak. Well, it depends on the steak and the amount of fat that has, but 8-ounce could have a nice like 45
Okay.
to, yeah.
Okay. So you could get away
50,
with it.
absolutely. Okay. And there's chicken, there's eggs, for people who are on the vegetarian and vegan, they have to be more thoughtful in the way that they're planning their meals. But that
do you supplement protein? Is that
I mean, I think there are definitely ways that you can supplement wisely. And to me, like when it comes to whey protein isolate, I think that's a great, that's a great supplement. So for people who don't have any issues with dairy or anything like that.
Right.
And for other people who are not, or who are vegetarian or vegan, I'm sorry, I'm being distracted right now by my phone. That's why I'm lost my train of thought.
No, you're fine.
But there are pea proteins and rice protein blends and things like that they can supplement as well if they're having issues. But I think, just that protein piece can lead to satiety, to blood sugar balance, and it's not that. I think from my understanding of the science, and also making sure that they have muscle, that they're not losing muscle, but even building muscle.
Right.
And that's really important for longevity and just for metabolic health.
Well, they have a lot of treatments, or I should say, like when they go to older people, when they do therapy and stuff, there's a lot of weight training that occurs now. I mean, sometimes it's body weight and that kind of thing, but because of what you were saying, the building muscle into older age and maintaining muscle is very important, because it stabilizes your entire body, and you can continue to walk around, you can continue to move well. And that's where I saw a shift. Susan, my wife, she had hip replacement surgery. It's been about a year, I guess, year and a half. She was a congenital thing that she had. It just deteriorated over time or whatever. But anyway, the old way of having a major surgery like that was you have surgery, they replace this part of your body, and then you rest, and then you let it repair. And now it's shifted dramatically. The day after, it's like she went in under the knife, had the surgery. It ended at, I don't know, 3:00 in the afternoon. She slept for the rest of the day. They woke her up the next morning at 6:00, and she had to start walking immediately, because they said you have to build up the tissue and the muscles around that. And if you lay there and you don't move, they'll atrophy and it gets worse, and recovery time takes longer. Right.
Absolutely. And so that's where the exercise piece comes in. So like, yes, you're eating these foods, but you have to have this stimuli to build. Right. And that's at every age. At every age, you should be doing some kind of resistance training. So it's something that would be personalized to you, like, but what your abilities are. But I think, starting with 2 to 3 days of some kind of resistance training. So again, going to our conversation of what would I, encourage people to do. And then along with that, having daily walks of at least, if you could do 30 minutes, awesome. If you could do an hour, awesome. But just walking. That is those two things are going to help.
Can you explain to people why walking is so important? Because I think people think, well, I'm just walking. My heart rate's not really getting up. It's not why is that? So why does that really, I didn't realize actually until a couple of years ago how impactful it was to some extent, but can you explain that?
Yeah. I think the number one thing is that it's the most accessible. So you don't have to do much in order to go walking, right? And it's the most sustainable. So you're not putting yourself out by like doing these hard cardio sessions. Not to mention that when you're moving your body, so you're utilizing, your glucose, and so you're maintaining, healthy blood sugar levels, and just just on a cellular level, just utilizing everything to the best of its capacity. But because it's sustainable, it's something that you can just do every day. And what I found is that, because again, not just I found, but this is from what I've read. So not just anecdotally working with clients, but also from, what I read.
So the science says
that, when we're just doing something like that kind of at a low level, we don't tend to like go home and get really, really hungry, as opposed to like a hard cardio session. And so a lot of times where people are just like working out so hard,
they eat hard too.
And it's not enough like to cover like what the workout was,
Right.
or they're eating above maintenance.
Right.
Like, what's
Well,
happening?
and plus too, when your workouts fall off and you don't work out hard, but you
And
still
then you're
kind of
still
eat hard.
continuing those,
Yeah.
you're continuing those same habits.
Yeah.
Whereas walking, because it's just low grade,
Mhm.
you're not. In fact, it can help
Yeah.
it can help manage that.
Yeah.
And if you take a walk after you eat,
Yes,
bring
I've
the
heard
blood
that.
sugar down.
Yeah.
And so those are great things. So 2 to 3, if you could do 2 to 4, or if you have the ability, 3 to 5 resistance training, so it doesn't have to be long. It can be 20 minutes,
Yeah.
per week, or per time that you're doing
And by
it.
the way,
And then
again,
daily
just
walks.
do something.
Just do something.
It doesn't
Even
have
if you
to be.
start with one day, I
Yeah.
would love that. And that could
Yes.
be like a whole body situation,
Yeah.
just moving your body with
Yeah.
bands or body weight.
Body weight, I think, again, this is stuff that I learned a little while ago, but I didn't realize some of the benefits of just using your body. I mean, what are they called? Hindu squats. Where you go all the way down,
Oh, yeah.
deep into
Uh-huh.
this little thing.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's just purely body weight, push-ups, pull-ups, all of those
Those
type
are
of things.
great.
Anything that you can do just to work on some, core, or I should say the major muscle groups,
Mhm.
your back, your
Mhm.
legs, those kind of things, because then you get all the fat burning benefits of it.
Yep.
You get the blood, the lower blood sugar levels and all of those things that kind of just overall make you feel better. And like you said, you don't have to do, 1,000 push-ups. Like, just do 10,
Start somewhere.
start doing 10.
Start where you are.
Yeah.
Start where you are.
I like that. Yes. Start where you are.
And then just do one more tomorrow, and
Yeah.
then another one,
Yeah.
and then another one, and just keep showing up for yourself, and do 1%. Even if you're just doing 1%, just keep showing up. Even on a day that you're not feeling well, even just show up and just like something.
Yeah.
Just but of course, with that, honor. Like, if you're really not feeling well, honor
Yes.
that and take care
Yes.
of yourself and do what
Yes.
you need to do. So, I mean, there definitely has to be some flexibility there, right? Like,
would you say there's a benefit to like a reward system for yourself a little bit
absolutely
too?
along the way,
Okay.
because you're not going to see.
Don't punish yourself so much if you fail. Yeah.
No. And I think not seeing anything as a failure, seeing it as a learning.
Yeah.
Like, this has just not worked for me.
Yeah.
So what have I learned from this, and what can I do differently? And heck, I mean, the fact that you even tried, to me, that's success.
Yeah.
I think so I don't even like to look at things as failures. I
Right.
really don't. And it's not me being like optimistic. I just don't think there are. I think
Yeah.
there's just that didn't work.
So I love Kobe Bryant. Okay. So, and not because of basketball, like, cause I'm a Mavs fan, and the Lakers and Kobe beat us for a long time. But, after he passed away, I got into kind of his mentality side of things a little bit. And, and how we talked about tools, social media tools, like my TikTok is filled with Kobe and, these guys that are motivational people and whatever, just because that's what it's not people dancing or cat videos. Like, that's, you can craft your tools to whatever you want them to be.
Yeah.
But anyway, he's got one where he's doing an interview and somebody asks him, like, how do you deal with failure? And he kind of gets pissed. He's like, I don't even know what that is. He's like, what does that even mean? What is failure?
Yeah.
He's like, I did this thing. It didn't work out the way I wanted it to.
Yeah.
Well, I got to get up tomorrow and do something else anyway.
Yeah.
So, why would I dwell on this thing that didn't turn out the way I wanted to? He's like, that's a stupid word. I don't even like the word failure, because it's just learning. I just learned I did something wrong. I don't want to do it that way anymore. Now I'm going to do it a different way. But no matter what, and he's like, even if I have success, if I did it right, well, guess what? I got to wake up tomorrow. I got to do something else again then too. Yeah. So it's just this constant, like, there is no failure there. There's success, but there isn't. You never get to the end point, right? You never get to the place where, like we said, we're back to where we talked about retirement, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to retire. Okay, well, what does that mean? You're going to sit on a beach and play golf? Well, you're going to do that every day for the next 15 years or however long you're alive? How is that sustainable? It's not.
Exactly.
So you have to just accept the fact that there isn't an end. There is an end, but we all have that when it's shut, when the lights shut off.
Yeah.
But or maybe they open back up, who knows? But there isn't a day where you're just gonna go, everything's done.
I know.
It never happens. So if that day isn't there, then neither is the one where everything is falling apart, right? So don't get mired in failure. Don't get overly thrilled about successes. I mean, celebrate yourself, that kind of thing. But tomorrow's another day. You're going to have to wake up and you're going to have to do whatever's got to be done tomorrow.
Just show up.
Just show up.
Just show up, man.
Just show up.
Like, just do the best that you can. And I mean, like, we're getting philosophical here. I love it. But yeah, I mean, it's showing up for yourself every single day and knowing that like one thing that you did isn't going to disrupt all the other stuff that you've done.
Yeah.
And I think looking back at like your past successes and really using that as a motivation, because people are constantly looking for motivation. They're like,
Yeah.
well, I don't have enough motivation. Well, you know what? I don't either. And I think that's where
everybody suffers
we
from that.
definitely have to have like some things in place that are just like, well, look, discipline is going to outweigh motivation.
Yep.
And then you have to have like that consistency over just like, whatever it is. Like I wrote some notes for myself to not forget, but like the progress over perfection, like also remembering that and not getting, I have a lot of, well, I already messed up this day. So I might as well just, it's all to heck from here. And it's like, no.
Well, it's funny. I think we're wired that way, whether people realize it or not. And I read this thing and I keep meaning to go back because I heard it and I've heard it a couple of times and I don't know that it's 100% true. So I'm going to phrase it that way, but I'm fairly certain it is. But anyway, so there was apparently this study that they did it was either Harvard or Stanford. And it was, probably 10 or 15 years ago. And they had some people with traumatic brain injuries that, so they were in a place where I don't want to say that they weren't going to live, but it was certainly like, they're willing to try whatever they can try to see what they can do. So essentially they took different, like nodes essentially and implanted them into their brain, and it controlled emotion centers within the brain. And somehow there was like a pad that you could stimulate and push a button and you could be, didn't mean to do that. You could be happy or you could be sad or it would stimulate some type of emotion in your brain.
Yeah.
And so the people that were running the experiment basically assumed that people would gravitate to joy and pleasure and all the positive things that we experience, and have. And it was I think it was like 25 people. So, take this for what it is. But what they actually found was that people gravitated more towards frustration. And the reason being, like what they basically hypothesized based off of, what they had studied and learned, was that people tend to gravitate towards challenges and things that are hard because that going through that process is the reward and not the actual reward of getting it. So for example, we're cavemen living in a, trying to keep our family safe, whatever. Well, all right, I got to build a fire because I got to warm the cave. All right. So I go get wood, I build the fire, fire's built.
Okay. Now what?
Yeah. Okay. Well, now I got to feed everybody.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, all right. Well, let's go kill the animal, bring it home. Now we got the food back. All right. Here's the food.
We're always on to the next thing.
Now what? Yeah. Right. So that time when you accomplish that thing, it's like when the team wins the Super Bowl, there's that moment of, oh, this is amazing. It's wonderful or whatever. But it lasts that long. Right. And it's the struggle to get to that point that is really where everything, where the true pleasure, the true enjoyment of life occurs. It's not the accomplishment of the thing. It's getting to the thing. It's the, what do they say? It's the journey. It's not the destination.
Yeah. And people are always so focused on the destination. And I think, kind of to bring it all together is that sustainability piece. And I think that's why people have trouble. They're like, I've succeeded, I've made it here, but then I went right back to where things were because they never planned out the sustainability part of it. They never planned out what happens after this, when it's just the daily stuff. Yeah. Kind of what you were talking about with Kobe, where he's like, well, I just show up. Tomorrow I still have to do this.
Gotta do it again.
And that's the thing. You're going to have to wake up and do the same thing and do the same thing. And you have to build in like systems and little rewards and little motivations. And sometimes you just have to rely on discipline or a community or whatever it is that you have to do, but you have to plan for it. So circling back to the New Year's resolutions is no one is planning for that. They're just like, they just want that little reward. Yeah. But what then?
Yeah. What happens next?
Yeah. And the thing is, honestly, that's where kind of like the magic is after that, when you just learn how to just make it this daily thing that you do. It's just like brushing your teeth because you had nasty breath,
Right. And would you say that needs to be the mindset for people? Then it's not, again, it goes back to the goal, right? Okay. Having goals is good, right? but having a plan is better.
Really important.
Yeah.
If you don't have a plan, then I mean, what in the world are you doing?
Right.
Like it's like people want to eat healthier, but they didn't even like plan their shopping or the
Right.
meals that they're going to do. So how are you going to eat healthier? Then they're like, well, then I just ate what was available, or I went to, picked up some food, which because they never had a plan. So
Yeah.
you have to start with a plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that, when it comes to people wanting to take care of themselves and I think everybody wants to be a better version of themselves.
Obviously.
Right. That's why. Do you like my shirt? My shirt says "Worry about yourself."
Oh, I like
That's
it. Yeah.
one of my
That's cute.
friends made this for me. There's a little girl. I got this from there's a social media video where
Yeah.
it's this little girl and she's
I
like
think I saw
maybe
that.
3
Yeah.
and she's putting on her seatbelt,
Yeah,
and
I saw
her
that.
dad's filming her. He's like, "What are you doing?" She's like,
Worry
"I'm
about yourself.
worry about yourself."
I love it.
Like that's, to me, that is like philosophy for life. Just because if you become the best version of you that's available, that you
Yeah.
can get to, and by the way, that never ends. It
Constant.
continually goes along. But if you can be that, then everything else just kind of seems to work out well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You just got to take care of you.
When you're taking care, and it sounds selfish, but it's not.
No,
It's not.
It's the most unselfish thing, honestly, because if you are your best self, you're available for other people.
Right.
Hands down. If I'm going to not take care of myself, I will not be a good mom, a good wife, a good friend, a good daughter, whatever, because I won't have the bandwidth for it. But if
Right.
I take care of myself, I fill up my battery, that I'm like, all I want to do is give,
Yeah.
because I feel like that's my purpose in life.
Yeah.
Right. But
Yeah.
if I don't take care of that, I'm just going to be exhausted, burnt out. Got to take care of yourself. And not even like saying like, I think again, words matter. And so when people are saying I'm being selfish, I'm taking care of myself. No, I'm just doing things to take care of myself,
Mhm.
whatever it is.
Yeah.
So
No, I think that that's something that, if I think more and more people should spend more and more time getting better on on their own terms with their own way, but you need help, right? Sometimes you need
yeah.
a little bit of guidance, you need a little bit of help, and that's where somebody like you comes in.
Yes. Yes.
So before we've been going for an hour and a half, by the way.
Oh, wow.
Yes. See, I told you, it's like
Yeah.
a vortex. It eats it up
By the way,
quick.
Conrad's saying that you should do 20 push-ups on the live stream, but we'll let that. We'll do that later.
We'll do on the next one, because we're going to come back. Because again, there's 8 million things. We could go deeper into the meditation thing. We could go deeper into the more nutrition. We kind of did a lot of, I think there was a lot of philosophy today.
Listen, my favorite, actually, probably that's my favorite above nutrition.
Yes. Well, you have to have your mind in the right place
Right.
in order to be able to want to accomplish things. But there is a lot of nuts and bolts stuff that, you're going to be like my quarterly health expert. Maybe I'll have come in and do this for me.
I'd love it.
So, because again, when you were talking about nerding out on stuff, this is stuff that I nerd out on all the time. I love this kind of thing.
I get it.
But before we go, because we are pretty deep into here, is there anything that you wanted to mention or talk about? Because you got your notes, and I'm sure we touched on like 5% of what you wrote down.
Yeah, maybe one thing.
Right. Is there anything that you really wanted to mention? And then the second thing I want to do is I do want you to, give a little commercial for yourself a little bit, because I think what you do is very important. And I think that people need to take care of themselves, and they need to make themselves a priority, and they need to, and I don't mean, when I say this, I'm not saying, go drop, but you have to, money is the currency of all things. And if you're going to spend time and effort on yourself, it requires a little bit of money. If you want to go to the gym, you pay a gym membership. If you want to go seek therapy, you pay a therapist. If you want to eat better, sometimes, unfortunately, these days, healthier foods are a little bit more expensive. It's messed up in our society that it's that way, but that's what it is. So all of this stuff costs something, but what you don't understand, or what maybe people don't realize, is you have to invest in yourself.
Yeah.
And when you invest in yourself, you become a better version of you, which becomes a better version of everybody else. So I want you to tell everybody what you do, what you offer, give me a little Donna commercial. That's what I'm looking for.
That sounds good. So first of all, yes, investing in your health is the most important thing that you can do. If you have children, your children will thank you, because it's something that it doesn't just impact you, it impacts everyone else around you.
Right.
And I experience this on the daily just with my family members, and it's just take care of yourself, because it's sad when it's kind of like they say, would you rather spend money now in the upfront or later on in medical bills? And I'll tell you what, spend on yourself on the front end. And as for me, what I offer is one-on-one services, but I also work with couples and with families.
Okay.
And I've done groups in the past, may get back to that as well. But if you want to reach me, can email me, Donna Shafir, D-A-N-A, Shafir, S-H-A-F-I-R, wellness@gmail.com.
Okay.
I'm also on Instagram at Donna's Dose, D-A-N-A, Donna's S-D-O-S-E, Donna's Dose of Wellness. And then you can find me on Facebook as well. But email is probably just the easiest way to contact me.
Okay.
And we can have, I offer a complimentary 15-minute conversation so you can know if I'm the right fit for you.
Yep.
I think that's really important is, even if I'm not, there are people out there who are. So just find the person who's the right fit for you. And that applies as for health coaching and therapy and whatever it is that you're looking for.
Yeah.
You were talking about doctors as well, just doctors who listen to you. You have to find, you are the consumer and this is your health, and don't just give your health to someone else. You are the advocate for yourself.
Yeah.
So find someone who is listening to you, who is partnering with you. And
just because they have a couple of letters in front of their name doesn't mean they're right for you and they know everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You again, you are the expert in your own life, and you have to trust your intuition. And I mean, even if you just want to chat with me and I can guide you to the right path, I'm happy to do that as well.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to come see me and do this.
you.
And I definitely want to do it again in the future because, like I said, I can nerd out on this stuff all day long. So I always like to find somebody that's on the same wavelength with me with this kind of stuff. And you can teach me so many things because, unfortunately, when it comes to the world of health and wellness, there's a lot of we'll call it misinformation. I hate that word, but there's a lot of information,
a lot of
out
noise.
there.
A lot of noise.
Yeah. And there's a lot
confusing.
of people that are trying to maybe earn a quick buck as opposed to actually help you.
Yeah.
And sifting through some of that can be tough, especially when you're in a position where things aren't necessarily going great for you physically or mentally, and you're just looking for a lifeline. And so you start grabbing to the first thing that seems, attractive and beneficial. And it doesn't always work out that way. So, so having good people that you can trust and talk to somebody that can really point you in the right direction and give you a lot of good insight and feedback on yourself. And then, like you've said a million times, finding someone that will listen to what you have to say, because like you said, you're the expert of yourself. Right. So thank you so much. It was a lot of fun, and we will definitely do it again sometime. Awesome. See you guys. Y'all have a great new year. Make those resolutions.
Happy New Year.
Yep.